On the 15th of November 2014, a terrorist took over the Lindt Chocolate Café in Martin Place, in the heart of Sydney, Australia, holding 18 customers and staff hostage, creating a siege that would last for over 16 hours. Although numerous hostages escaped, by the time the event concluded, 2 innocent people were dead and 4 others were injured. For 10 years, this incident was suppressed under a government-mandated gag order. This prevented the New South Wales Police Tactical Operations Unit, or TOU for short, from ever publicly revealing even their names. As a result, despite a detailed and scathing coroner's inquest report, the largest and most expensive in Australian history, there has been very little discussion about what actually happened that night from a tactical perspective. My guest today is Ben Besant. Ben, or Officer A, as he was identified in the coroner's report, was the lead member of the Alpha team during the intervention and the officer who engaged and killed the terrorist. He's currently the author of a book, Tiger, 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 which details not only what happened that night, but also explains a very personal battle to recover his mental health following the Lindt Café siege. In keeping with the standard policy of the debrief, we will not be discussing the name, objective, or affiliation of the terrorist in the hope that time will erase his memory. We will, of course, be discussing the names of the team, and in this case, the hostages, because they are heroes and need to be remembered. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Ben Besant. My name is John Becker. For the past 4 decades, I've dedicated my life to protecting tactical operators. During this time, I've worked with many of the world's top law enforcement and military units. As a result, I've had the privilege of working with the amazing leaders who take teams into the world's most dangerous situations. The goal of this podcast is to share their stories in hopes of making us all better leaders, better thinkers, and better people. Welcome to the Debrief. Ben, thanks so much for being here with me, man.
Too easy. I appreciate you having me on.
So, as an American, and the majority of the audience is American, I don't think we truly understand kind of Australian policing. So maybe a good place for us to start is kind of how Australian policing is structured.
Yeah, of course. In our conversations, we had brief discussions on it, and it's very, very different. Policing is more a state responsibility. So for the state of New South Wales, which is the highest population, Sydney, most of your viewers will know about, the police force has roughly 16,000 members, and our tactical team, the TOU, Tactical Operations Unit, is responsible for counterterrorism within the whole state. It's a state responsibility. We do have a federal police, but very different powers to, say, the FBI. They would never come in and step over or take over situations from us. So for us as a unit, the Tactical Operations Unit, we do all normal, say, SWAT training, similar to your units, but on top of that, we also, as discussed, have the responsibility of the counterterrorism response for the state. So we do above and beyond other courses.
So it's not what, like, we would think, okay, there's a, like we have states also, obviously, we have 50 of them, but our states are considerably smaller. Politically, the federal government has a lot more power. In Australia, it is like the state, like New South Wales is the large political divide, and the federal government just kind of ties them together.
Yeah. The certain things each state is responsible for. So for New South Wales, policing is the state's responsibility, as, say, medical and things like that. Defence is still a federal responsibility. But for us to deploy defence personnel, we obviously have our own special forces units over here. We have TAG East, which is made up of the commandos who do have a terrorism response, but to be deployed, that needs to go to the Prime Minister, who's to then declare martial law before they can be deployed, which is quite a huge thing down here in Australia. It hasn't happened before. Hence the reason why our unit are trained to deal with counter-terrorism. If there was, say, a Mumbai-style incident down in our state, where we were stretched beyond our capabilities, mostly numbers-wise, that's when I see the TAG East, the Special Forces, being also deployed, but they wouldn't necessarily take over. We would work alongside them. That's why we've done training together for situations like that.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I
Yeah,
mean, it's you guys are not you're not quite as militant towards government as we are, but have that same kind of mindset about strong federal government versus state government, and deployment of defense personnel is not a particularly popular topic among
no,
among the civilian population.
no, not at all. No,
Yeah.
yeah.
That makes sense. So let's talk a little bit about your career. How long had you been on? I mean, let's look at it from the perspective of this incident, which was 10 years ago. How long had you been on, and kind of what assignments had you worked prior to TOU?
Yeah, so I first joined the police force in 2001, where I went to police academy roughly a year. Then I was first deployed to Bankstown Local Area Command, which is predominantly Middle Eastern people living there, plus a Vietnamese population, Pacific Islander populations. Where I grew up was grew up on acreage, so the you'd say the main population out there were Caucasian. So for me to be deployed into that area, which at the time was known to be the busiest and most amount of violence coming out of that area in Sydney, in Australia, I believe. So when I was at the police academy, of course, being a cocky young bloke, that's where I wanted to go. So yeah, I started there. I spent 6 years, 4 years in general duties, say street cop. Then I went into the proactive unit, which is sort of street level crime, gangs, that sort of thing, where I was dressed in plain clothes, undercover type work. And yeah, after that, I applied to join the TAU, the Tactical Operations Unit, and did that selection, which was in itself brutal, and managed to get selected into the TAU after that. So that was 2008, I believe.
So you had been on the team for 5-ish years when this incident occurred.
Yeah, closer to 6, I believe. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And talk to me a little bit. I mean, obviously, without going into a great deal of detail, kind of give me an overview of the team. How big is it? We talked a little bit about mission set, but like, how big is the team? What are the resources? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I believe full strength there's 75 full-time operators. You're not allocated to set teams. You're just whoever's rostered on the day. But within that, you're on call a lot, and you join the unit knowing that doesn't really matter what you're doing. If you're on annual leave or anything, you can be called in for a large incident such as Lindt. We, as I said, we're responsible for the whole state, but then you have part-time units throughout the state too, who are trained to a certain level, nowhere near our level, and if there's an incident there that requires us to be deployed, they'll lock down the scene and make it safe, and then we'll either be flown there or deploy there as quickly as we can.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an uncommon model in other countries where you have small regional assets, but they're not counterterrorism, they're not hostage rescue, they're search warrant capability. Is that kind of what it is?
Yeah, oh, they are trained to do entries and stuff like that, in exigent circumstances, as you can imagine. If we can't get there in time, they are trained to do that. But our training is roughly a year of training, whereas theirs is obviously because they're a part-time unit and they may be detectives or other units, their training isn't anything like our level.
And TOU, I mean, this is the full-time job of TOU is just tactical.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's a broad spectrum of jobs. We even attend, so mostly sieges, armed offenders. Basically, to the layperson, any job where there's someone with firearms or weapons who are willing to use it on police or hostages, from that basic level all the way up to counterterrorism jobs.
Got it. Okay, I think that kind of gives us context
Yeah.
for where the team is. I mean, this was 10 years ago, so let's kind of go back in the way back machine here and talk about what is the political environment. I mean, obviously in you know 2014, 15, there's still two wars going on. But in Australia, what is the political environment like related to terrorism?
Yeah, obviously that's post 9/11, and there was obviously terrorism events all around the Western world, including here in Australia. Um, we had been doing a lot of counterterrorism work leading up to it, lots of search warrants and arrests. We had a large cell in operation down here with between 40 to 50 members who were planning to execute some pretty horrendous crimes on civilians here, which we managed to arrest. That was a joint counterterrorism operation that involved the federal police, our police, counterterrorism unit, and ASIO, which is, I suppose, in a roundabout way similar to your CIA. So there was a joint task force set up for this, and we were the people arresting them. So we'd be doing lots of arrests. We'd been getting daily briefings. We knew, like, our threat terror level was at its highest, and within us as a unit, we believed it was just a matter of time till a big incident happened.
Yeah, and if my memory serves correctly, you guys interrupted or disrupted a cell that was planning to just grab a civilian off the street and behead him or something, right?
Yeah, that was one of many things they were planning. Yeah, yep.
Yeah, I remember that one got some news coverage and there was conversation because obviously that's a pretty horrific thing to do.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of it's still not public, exactly what their plans were.
Yeah.
But yeah, we only managed to get to them, yeah, just in time. So there was lots of things happening. Just weeks before, the two counter-terrorism police officers down in Melbourne, in Victoria, so our second largest state, they'd been attacked down there. So yeah, it was the feeling was it was imminent. There was something due to happen at any time.
So from a team standpoint, you guys are right on point at this point. You're training hard. You're queued up and ready to go, and kind of expecting to see something. Um, as teams all were at that point in environment, right? Like there was a lot of specific threat intelligence that was getting teams,
Yeah.
spun up. But from a readiness standpoint, you guys are about as good as you're going to be at that point in time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we were all ready. I don't recall exactly, but I imagine annual leave, everything was cancelled, so everyone was ready, and even within ourselves, we were prepared to.
So okay, so let's walk forward to the event. Um, how's your day start? Let's start with kind of how you start your day, and then we'll walk through the timeline of the event.
Yeah, so um, we actually do 12-hour shifts. The day started with just a morning briefing where the briefing would have included terrorism briefing or potential things happening. After that, I actually was sent to a police psychologist because our unit is obviously exposed to constant trauma. The police force recommend that we see a psychologist every 3 to 6 months or so, which sadly is mostly just a box ticking exercise, I believe. We all knew what to say. We all wanted to stay operational. So Yeah, I just completed that. Walking back into the office, I got the vibe straight away that something was wrong. There wasn't many people in the office, and yeah, I just got the feeling instantly something was wrong. As I walked in, one of my sergeants, team leader, came up and just said, grab your stuff, we're going." Um, my response was, "So the big ones happened then?" And he just said yes. So yeah, in that moment, I knew something big was happening. Grabbed all my personal gear, went downstairs, loaded up all my vest and firearm, everything quickly, and then we jumped into the armored vehicle and headed down to Martin Place, which is located right in the centre of Sydney.
Yeah, maybe just kind of give context. So this cafe is, it's we think of Lindt as a chocolate company, but in addition to a chocolate company, they obviously have cafes in Sydney,
Yeah,
Australia. So
yeah.
give me kind of context for that.
Australia is a very cafe culture, I would say. We have cafes for everything. Within the Link Cafe, obviously they sell all their chocolates and hot chocolate and everything like that. Where it was located was right in the heart of Sydney, in the CBD, where all the large office buildings were. The Reserve Bank was just opposite. Reserve Bank of Australia. We had the big law offices just up the road, and directly opposite was one of our largest television stations, Channel 7, who actually managed to broadcast the whole incident. So, as you can imagine, it shut down entire blocks of the city, and to an extent, shut down the city. So, not sure how much plan he put into it, but where he did it was perfect location to terrorise and upset the whole of Sydney.
Yeah, I mean, you're across the street from a news station that's going to watch the whole thing play out, and you're right in the heart of downtown.
Yeah,
So everybody in Australia is going to know what's happening in 10 minutes.
exactly. Yeah, that's how it
So
happened.
he walks in like 8:30 in the morning, if I remember correctly, and like this cafe is a place you could go and have a coffee with a friend. When at the point that he enters, there are obviously people working there, but there are other people that are just there having a breakfast or a coffee or something else, right?
Yeah, exactly. And as he walked in, he's walked in with his backpack on. He did have a sawn-off shotgun at the time, but that was hidden. He's walked in quite casually and taken a seat, so there was no initial concerns by anyone in there. Before he called the manager, Tory Johnson, over to his table, and that's when he notified him that they were under attack by Islamic State. Before he gave him a message that he wanted to read out to the police.
Okay, so that's about an hour 10, if I remember correctly. Like we're talking like 9:44, 9:45. He
Yeah,
goes in like 8:30, and it's roughly an hour 15 later that he gets a hold of Tori and at that point pulls the shotgun out.
yeah. I don't have the timeline in front of me, but I believe that he didn't take actually that long to do that. Yeah, he walked in, sat down, made himself comfortable. Called the waitresses come over to him, and that's when he's called Tory Johnson pretty much straight away. From there, yeah, he's told the manager to lock all the doors, that he has a bomb, and he's not afraid to detonate it. So my understanding was it was quite quick.
Got it.
Yeah,
And um I mean, foreshadowing a little bit, Tory Johnson's actions on this day um certainly are ridiculously brave and kind of above reproach. And he's going to be a theme throughout the day, but it's certainly worth mentioning that
yeah,
his heroism starts at the minute that he's threatened.
yeah. Extremely brave man throughout the entire day. 100%.
So, at some point after that happens, the police are notified. You guys are notified. How long, assuming it's like 9:40 something ish, When do you guys arrive on scene?
Yeah, so as I said, a lot of operators had been deployed before I came into the office. As soon as I did, that's when myself, my sergeant, and another operator jumped into our armoured vehicle. We drove, obviously as fast as we could into. I think we pulled up on Elizabeth Street, so it's sort of down the bottom below the cafe. On my arrival, I was deployed onto a team and allocated my position, which was first cover man, first shooter behind the shield man. There was on arrival there was a lot of general duties, police, like street cops, moving a lot of distraught people away from the scene. From our perspective, there was intelligence coming in, basically by the second, different intelligence coming in. There had been before my arrival and before the TOU's arrival, there was a brave highway patrol officer who had approached the cafe and looked in, observed in through the glass doors in the foyer, and he had seen the terrorist with his backpack with wires protruding and armed with a pump action shotgun. So we had that intel right from the beginning, and I believed, as did my fellow members, that it was serious right from the get go.
So he doesn't fire a shot though at this point, right? He makes a threat that he has a bomb. He's got a sawed-off shotgun. He has the bank customer, or I mean the cafe customers. Well, he has Tori lock the doors so that everybody is theoretically trapped inside of the cafe.
Yeah. On top of that, through the message that Tory Johnson was told to read out to police, he's told in that message there was not only that he has a bomb and he's not afraid to use it, but there were three other devices in three separate locations throughout the city. He also insinuated that he had fellow members working with him, and if police were to approach them, they would be detonated in different locations throughout the city.
Got it. This is getting complicated really fast.
Yeah, it is. And right from the beginning, we knew, this was a big incident. It was one we had to be very wary of.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. So, okay, so we're 18 hostages, suspect with a bomb, maybe 3 other bombs, claims he has Confederates, armed with a sawed-off shotgun. Team gets there, and obviously, I'm assuming at that point you're deploying into a containment position to kind of surround the problem and see what happens.
Yeah. We had 3 Sierra teams, 3 sniper teams deployed to different locations for observations, and we had 2 entry teams. We were the primary entry team, being the Alpha team. We actually moved our location onto the top of Phillip Street, so that's on the top side of the cafe, which is nice and close to respond, where we were deployed to a truck loading bay. And there was a second entry team, the Bravo team, and they were deployed onto the other side. So there's 2 main entries to the cafe. It's on the corner of Phillip Street and Martin Place. Primary entry point, which was our responsibility, is on the very corner. And then on the bottom side of the cafe is there's a large foyer. So I'd also like to say that the cafe was actually on the ground floor of a multi-story building that included a lot of office spaces and a lot of people above the cafe, which was also of concern when we first deployed.
So, I mean, this is kind of your typical cafe in a high-rise building, right? Where it has its own street entrance, which is on the corner.
Yeah.
And then it's got a secondary entrance that comes off of like an entry foyer where you might go in to take an elevator up to one of the offices or something.
Yeah, exactly. There was a lift well for the offices, and that was where the second entry point was.
Got it. So if we're picturing it in our brain, kind of the one side for the problem is going to be, the street, and then the 4-1 side is going to be that second street, and that the primary entrance is going to be right there on kind of that 4-1 corner. and then the secondary entrance, the one off the entrance, is on the 2 side.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. So as you guys are setting up, this thing's starting to evolve. What is the next piece of information, or what is the next action that occurs as we're evolving? Is the guy negotiating at this point?
At no point throughout the entire incident did he ever speak directly with police negotiators. The only communication that he would have would be through one of his hostages. So he would make the hostages ring and put his demands to the police negotiators through them. So yeah, at no point did he speak directly with police negotiators, which disappointingly to us, we never had communicated to us.
Oh, so you guys are maybe thinking that they're negotiating, and in fact, there's kind of not a negotiation taking
Yeah,
place. He's just making demands.
he's making demands. We're not told he hasn't spoken to police negotiators. From our standpoint, that's actually quite concerning that he's refusing to have direct contact with police negotiators.
Yeah, because if he's a professional terrorist, and I want to use that in air quotes, he's going to negotiate, right? If you look at the the incidents in Paris or any place else, the ones that were going to negotiate that were professional as you can be at this, the point is to negotiate, right? The point is to get the message out, and so right away you're kind of faced with this weird dilemma of he doesn't want to talk, and you're not even being told that.
Yeah, but it's also concerning that that also confirmed his motives. It was purely for the purpose of terrorism. He didn't want anything out of it. He never wanted money. He never wanted anything other than to terrorise the people of Sydney and everyone inside. So there was no demands other than he wanted some Islamic flags brought to him. He wanted to have a telephone conversation with our Prime Minister, who was Tony Abbott at the time, and demands like that. So for us on in the team and on a tactical level, if he's not willing to speak with police negotiators, it doesn't feel as if that he ever had any other intention other than for things to play out the way they eventually did.
So I'm assuming at this point you guys are forming kind of an emergency action plan, and and obviously deploying on that. At what point do you start to think about a direct action or deliberate action plan?
Yeah, so that's our standard operating procedure. Get into position, lock the place down, and then get a emergency action proposed and in place, which was done quite soon after we were in position. That had been approved, which is completely necessary for a job like that. From then, my understanding is our team leader, other team leaders, and our tactical coordinator, so our boss who's in the command post with all the other bosses running the job, were pushing for a deliberate action or direct action, as you call it, the entire day. And at no point during the day was it ever approved, which was definitely of a large concern to us.
Yeah, so you guys are you've submitted a plan, but the they'll just call it the leadership above the team is not approving the plan, even though you guys have submitted it.
Yeah, and I know that our boss, our inspector, was pushing for it the entire day, even trying to change certain things to see if they would approve it. But at no point throughout the day was it ever ever approved. Would you like me to talk about the whole management structure of a job in
Yeah, that'd
Australia?
be great.
Yeah, yeah. So for us, they if we're deployed to a job, we are still under the responsibility of the superintendent or the commander of that region that we are deployed into. And then above them is other ranks also that have a say on decision making. Deputy commissioner, stuff like that, region coordinators. But for us, we are never given control. That they will never hand control of the job to us and our bosses. So all that we really have is our inspector, who is our tactical coordinator, who is in the command post with also one of the bosses from the negotiators, and then the big boss, and all our inspector can do is advise them on what he believes is the best thing to do in this situation. And obviously, in this situation, direct action was obviously what we would have liked and would have been the best for the situation. But that's all he can do. He can't approve it or anything.
Yeah. So you guys are a service provider.
Yeah.
To whoever the incident commander and the local regional commander is. It's you're there if they want to use a tactical solution, but you are not in control of the situation and cannot make a decision for tactical intervention. They have to make a decision at a command level that, yeah, you guys can go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. But certain things, like once they've approved our emergency action, if our bosses deems that it fits the triggers of that emergency action, in this incident, the trigger was as high as a hostage being executed or in immediate risk of serious harm. As soon as that happens, our boss can step in and initiate the emergency action. But other than that, yeah, all the decisions are made above him to an extent.
And one of the themes that's going to play out here over the 16 hours of this event is that nothing is happening, and like nothing bad is happening right now, which is I think, and the coroner's report seemed to substantiate that. The fact that nothing has happened makes the command staff even more unlikely to make a decision, right? It creates kind of a decision inertia for the whole command staff in this instant, because like, well, he hasn't killed anybody, so why should we move now? We're winning because nobody's been killed.
Yeah, I can only speculate as to what they were thinking within the command post. But the big issue and what made this job so different for us is if it was just one man with armed with a shotgun, that's quite easy to contain and deal with. The whole issue right from the beginning was a bomb, and we do lots of training with the military. In relation to that, and everything about the large backpack with wires coming out said to us that it was in fact a bomb. And as I say, I'm speculating again, but if the command had initiated a deliberate action earlier in the day and that resulted in him detonating the bomb, ultimately that just leads to every hostage within the place being killed from our deployment, and potentially a lot of us. So I can defend somewhat a lot of the decisions made in relation to holding off, purely because if we had gone in and that resulted in him detonating that bomb and killing everyone inside, as you can imagine, that's not best case outcome.
Yeah, no, this is obviously a very complicated
Yeah.
situation. So, if my notes serve me correctly, 11 a.m. ish, there is approval given that if he releases hostages, he'll get time to appear on the news.
Okay. From our standpoint, we didn't have a lot of that sort of thing communicated to us. Uh, I'd like to say also from our position on the street and our operators, it was very concerning, the lack of intelligence that we were getting fed to us, and what we believe the command knew of the incident. We did have As I discussed before, we had three Sierra teams up in different locations trying to provide observations into the cafe, which is very, very limited. There were only small windows. There was stencil also, and he had the front windows. He had hostages all standing there with black Islamic flags with white writing all over them, which also blocked a lot of the view. Myself and my shield man, Paulie, approached my sergeant, my team leader, with these concerns, saying we need to have some more intelligence. We don't know what's going on inside the cafe, because from my standpoint, we don't know what he's doing. If he's executing hostages, we don't have any intelligence. He gave us the approval to move forward. So myself and my shield man pushed forward to the first of 4 windows. They're only small windows, and managed to look into the cafe. During that time, it would have been nearly up to 30 minutes or so. I managed to observe a lot of the hostages inside the cafe. They were in an extremely distraught and distressed state. Now, a lot of them were visibly crying. Some of them were shaking, clearly traumatized or terrorized. I did manage to observe him at quite a few different points. I saw him as described, male Middle Eastern with hair, a big backpack, a black camel mountain backpack. Sorry, it was very full, like it had something in there, which I believed at the time was a bomb, and I could clearly see 2 wires protruding from the bottom of it. He also had a pump-action shotgun that he carried on him the whole time, and every time I observed him move past or walk past any of the windows, he always had a hostage directly in front of him, either to their back or to the back of their head. So we managed to provide a lot of intelligence as to what was going on inside the cafe, feed that back to the command post, and then at some point he did see us and grabbed one of the hostages, Louisa Hope. I know her name, know her still to this day. He's reefed her to her feet, pointing the shotgun to the back of her head, and I couldn't hear him, but speculate he was screaming in our direction. So at that point, we did back off. But yeah, we desperately needed intelligence as to what was happening inside the cafe. We needed to observe him, his mannerism, the way he's acting, and intelligence on the bomb and the shotgun.
And just from a Sierra standpoint, the Sierra units are kind of across the street from the cafe in elevated positions, but there's also, if I remember correctly, there's kind of complications, right? Like one of them is a bank. Like there's a lot of glass problems here. This is not, single pane glasses. It's thick, heavy. You're the likelihood of you shooting through 2 sets of windows, and like there's a lot of intervening factors here for the Sierra teams.
Yeah, there is, and a lot of observation issues. A lot of the criticism that came out after the incident was why our snipers didn't take a shot. In reference to what you're saying, if there's glass at their end, that's obviously not an issue. We can take that out with a charge, explosive charge if need be, or we have ways of cutting through glass at their end. But I'd say on top of that, for reason why I still to this day don't think a sniper shot would have been the most effective in this situation is because a lot of the time during this heightened time of terrorism, a common thing was to have a dead man switch attached to a backpack bomb. And as I'm sure you know and your listeners know, the moment he's shot and either killed or incapacitated, he released this dead man switch, which detonates the bomb. So on killing him through a sniper shot, that ultimately can and will detonate, which would kill everyone inside the cafe. But on top of that, through my observations of him walking around the cafe, he never exposed himself to any of the windows or doors or a position where he could be shot. if he didn't have a hostage in front of him, and he always had the shotgun on their back or to the back of their head. And being a trained sniper myself, I know that if you were to shoot him, the body's natural reaction is to spasm, ultimately pull the trigger. Then at least one hostage is killed. Also, there are ways to obviously stop that by shooting the dual oblongata at the top of the brainstem, which is an extremely difficult shot at the best of times, let alone from an elevated position through glass as well. Not saying it wasn't an option, but also at the time of our entry through our intelligence, we hadn't been notified. The building manager at the time didn't know that this used to be an old bank, so the glass was actually bullet-resistant glass, which would have required a special glass cutting round as well. So, yeah, I'd say there'd be a lot of issues with taking a sniper shot throughout the day.
Yeah, I mean, you can see why, because I know that was in reading the report and reading all the news coverage. That
Yeah,
was
yeah.
one of, well, why didn't they just shoot him? And it's not just as simple as you just shoot him.
No, no, no. Like I said, the whole incident was just completely changed the moment there's a bomb in there and we don't know the details of the bomb.
So, what is the next significant event from the team's perspective that occurs?
Yeah, so as you can imagine, we were there for many hours. We had very little intelligence coming back to us, which is very concerning. Um, I'd seen the distraught hostages with the bomb, with the backpack, with the wires, and through all my training and through the military, I 100% believed it was a bomb, as did my team and upper management all believed it was a bomb. Um, Very little intelligence coming through from our Sierras as snipers because he really didn't move around the cafe so much. There were little bits of intel coming out, but not much. The next big incident I'd say was when the two hostages escaped from the Phillip Street Martin Place corner, so which was only say 30 meters in front of us. Without warning, they bust out of there, ran. As soon as we saw them, we called for them to come to us. And then as we're grabbing them and moving them to a position of safety, the fire door just in front of our position, a Lindt Cafe worker burst out of that just in front of us. So we also removed him to safety.
So, he starts with 18 hostages and 3 escape.
Free escape at this point, yeah.
And that's 3:30, if my notes are correct, about 3:30 in the afternoon. So, we're 7 hours into the incident before the first 3 hostages kinda take it into their own hands to get away.
Yeah, and it was a surprise to us. We didn't know they could manage to escape. Um, but yeah, so it's already 7 hours, as you can imagine. Sydney in full sun. It was a long day. There were points of ups and downs where we believed we were going to be deployed and sent in under an EA, and didn't. So to see the hostages come out was a good thing, that they were now safe. But in my mind and my fellow operators' mind, that was of concern because we believe that would elevate the terrorist to the point of having to take action because his directions have been disregarded.
Yeah, he's lost control of at least some of the situation. He's lost some of his collateral. You would assume that he is going to be more agitated.
Yeah, that's pretty safe assumption. We thought from a tactical level, other demands he'd made to speak to the Prime Minister Tony Abbott had been denied. Uh, Having ISIS flags brought to him had been denied. So we knew there were a number of things that had already been denied, and then to see hostages escaping now was obviously good that they are safe, but at the same time quite concerning. From what we heard back from upper management, they didn't seem to see it that way at all, which was also concerning to us.
How did they you're again kind of getting in their brains, but like what was their perception of that? Like, oh, this is a good sign, things are this is going well.
That's what it felt like. As I said, I can only speculate, but Yeah, making no decision and sitting it out has resulted in hostages escaping, and he hasn't actually executed or done anything as yet. So, yeah, speculation says that they were probably happy with how things were progressing.
Got it. Okay, so the hostage escape at 3:37, if my timeline is correct, and shortly thereafter, the news reports that hostages escaped.
Yeah, yep. As I stated, the whole incident was being live streamed from across the road with the large television station, which was still live streaming it. But there were also just about every other media who were further down the street streaming all of these incidents coming through.
And what effect on the suspect or the terrorist does the news coverage have?
From where we are, we didn't really get feedback on that, so I couldn't really say.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what is the next thing that happens? Two more hostages escape, if I remember correctly?
Yeah, I believe that was from the other side in the foyer. They managed to escape, managed to unlock the door, and then run to safety out that side as well.
Where did the first three escape from? Was
So
it the
that,
front?
yeah, that was the front. Yeah, so that was pretty much right in front of our position. Yeah,
So the first three escape from the main, let's call it the main door on
yep,
the corner.
yep,
The next two escape from the foyer. So he's lost containment on both sides of his problem.
yes, yep.
And at what point do you guys next hear from him? Or what is the next thing that occurs after the now two more hostages? Did you guys have a chance to debrief these hostages as they're coming out?
Yeah, so initially with the first three, the Lindt Cafe employee, my team leader did try speaking to him briefly, just because we were desperate on the street to get some intelligence. Everything he said I could overhear, and he was just that traumatized and in shock. It was just it appeared just garbled. He was just screaming, "You got to get in there! You got to get in there! He's going to kill everyone!" So from there, they're then handed over to police negotiators and specialists to try and get further intelligence from them. But yeah, we didn't hear anything back from that. From our standpoint, as I said, we're quite concerned now because as numerous hostages have come out, his demands have been refused. The hostages aren't listening to him and now escaping on their own. So, as you can imagine, we're of the opinion that he's completely enraged. Our boss has kept pushing for a deliberate action, direct action, which, yeah, as I stated throughout the day, was never approved. The Tag East guys, so the Special Forces Commandos, actually set up a mock cafe and they trialled our deliberate action, direct action, as you call it. And yeah, they were happy with it. They said that's what they would do in the same situation, which we also used to bolster our application to have it approved. But yeah, at no point was it, which is very concerning to us because reacting to anything under an emergency action is yeah, in response to his actions and not at our time of choosing, not the way we want to do it. And it's when everything else has failed, just our reaction to try and get in and save the hostages when we can.
So I just want to clarify and just kind of state back. So you guys you described your DA plan to the military commando unit that you guys are kind of your military sister unit, for lack of a better term, or brother unit, or however you want to describe it. You guys described it, and they said we'll go run it, and they set up a mock cafe and rehearsed your plan to come back with feedback.
Yeah, yeah. I would like to also say they're very competent at their job. They're a very highly trained unit. They set up yeah, a mock cafe and trolled our proposal for deliberate action. I can't still to this day, through suppression orders and everything, can't speak of the exact proposal that we made, which I still find quite ridiculous, to be honest. But our capabilities, as with a lot of our units, is, say, explosive entry, or is distraction techniques like large fuel air explosions. Our snipers have a lot of capabilities to deploy things into the cafe in situations like this. So we're, as I stated before, we're trained to a very high level to deal with this situation, and at no point were we actually allowed to do our job, I'd say.
And I mean, I think the audience, this show's audience can infer the kinds of things that you would have done on a deliberate action plan
Yeah.
for an HRT without having to, put you in Australian federal prison. But I think that, the fact that you have a second team run and, literally rehearse it and test it and come back and say, yep, good to go. We think it'll work. And still no action is taken. Do they ever approve a DA plan?
At no point during the day did they ever approve a DA plan.
So the decision is made that you guys are going to react to whatever he does,
Yep.
basically.
That was the only permission we were given throughout the day, was only to react upon him basically executing a hostage, or a hostage being at risk of serious harm.
Yeah, but with as little intel as you're able to receive, even as even as hostage being at risk of harm, we're going to find out is not going to be enough, or not get to you fast enough to allow the team to take the emergency action and get in.
Yeah, and from a tactical standpoint, it's not so much of concern to us, where we're trained, happy to do whatever we have to under whatever circumstance. But our primary mission is to try and save hostages, and as many as we can. And under the circumstances of an EA, an emergency action, that's significantly reduced.
Yeah, no, absolutely, because you're reacting, right? Like,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the other thing that I think probably bears mentioning is, we're 10, 11 hours into this. You guys have been there deployed and certainly doing whatever you can to rotate personnel and keep guys fresh. But like you're in this constant state of be ready for an EA, be ready for an EA. It's very difficult to keep the team sharp and fresh with 12 hours standing around, just in case of emergency, be ready. But we're not going to tell you when the emergency is going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. And there were times when we were stood to the EA, so we're at full ready. Certain times when when he was notified that his commands were rejected, they had us stood to with the EA, and on top of it being in the middle of summer in Sydney, which is quite hot. In our full kit, we're all in black, full ballas. All of our equipment weighs 25 kilos or so. Yeah, we're trained for it, but on top of that, the heightened points throughout the day of adrenaline pumps and then dumps also adds to it, I'd say.
Yeah, no, I mean it's not a great strategy to keep the team in this heightened state of alertness. Did you guys at any point were you rotating team members? Were you able to, like, you personally, were you able to get some time to just go sit down and recover and then rotate back in, or are you there kind of the whole time?
No, we always had a contingent, say 4 or so operators. We have a shield man and 3 or so behind them, but we did manage to get back into the truck loading bay and try and rotate a couple of operators through at a time, whether to go to the toilet or have a drink and just sort of relax for a bit. So there was that, which was being supervised by our team leader.
Got it. Okay, so it's roughly 5 o'clock when the 2 hostages, 3 hostages escape at 3:30. 5 o'clock, 2 more escape, and at some point the negotiators have a call through one of the hostages, if I remember correctly, trying to engage the suspect?
Yeah, there were a number of phone calls through the day, but as I said, the negotiators never actually managed to speak directly to him. That's not despite their efforts. They did try and do that. A lot of the time, he was using a young guy. When I say young, I'm not sure if he's age 19 or 20 at the time. He would constantly be communicating demands to police negotiators, but at no point did he ever speak to them.
And so at no point is he getting any kind of concessions either from you guys.
No, no. Yeah, from my understanding, is every one of his demands were rejected, and in our team, obviously throughout the day, we managed to do a lot of talking because downtime or things like that. And yeah, my position and the others in my team was this felt like it was ramping up because hostages were escaping. All of his demands were being completely rejected.
And if my notes are correct, is 8:30 p.m. he starts demanding that the Christmas lights on the street be turned off.
Yes, that was around that time. Night. It's obviously nighttime now. It, I will say it was a very surreal feeling in the city, in the heart of Sydney. There was no one. I spent a lot of time in the city, and yeah, it was very surreal feeling that the streets were bare. The only thing I remember was the pedestrian crossing over here. They make a weird buzzing sound as people are allowed to cross. I remember that going off. I remember uh, rubbish or litter blowing through the streets, and the only thing we could see a long way away was the other police and cameras. But yeah, he wanted the Christmas lights and street lighting turned off outside. That was his demands. And from a tactical standpoint too, that made sense to us. So we obviously wanted it off because if we ever were allowed to make entry, we're silhouetted. He can see us coming from the streetlights outside. I'm not sure what time exactly he did turn the cafe lights off, but that was done. So it was now black or dark inside, and our position was fully lit.
But the suspect asked for those Christmas lights to be turned off. Do those end up getting turned off? Because that's actually to your advantage.
Yeah, and I know we pushed for it as well. At no point did they get turned off. I've heard rumors of what happened, but yeah, I can't say for sure. It was something to do with the sorry. It was something to do with it was too hard, or the electrician couldn't get access, or something like that. But yeah, from our standpoint, that was also very frustrating. And on top of everything, with the terrorist, all his demands being rejected, hostages escaping, and now he was having this also rejected. Imagine it would have been infuriating for him.
Yeah, he's getting nothing that he wants,
Yeah.
and now we're, you know, 16, 15, 16 hours, well, 14 hours into the incident. So at 10:30 p.m., there's a news conference. Um, an assistant commissioner and someone he describes as a forward commander go forward and announce to the media that they are using a contain and negotiate strategy. Did you guys know that was coming? I mean, do you even know you're using a contain and negotiate strategy at that point?
No, we did know, and that is sort of standard practice for a hostage situation. But we knew we were working under that situation. But at the same time, that was with any standard job, that would be your deployment, contain, and negotiate. That was sort of our standard practice for hostage situations. But this was also very different because of the size of the job, the bomb also. But for us to have the terrorist not speaking with negotiators is already a big red flag. To have no deliberate action at any point being considered or approved, that's another big red flag for us. Seeing all of his demands not being met and hostages escaping, for us, that's another big red flag. So from our standpoint and a tactical point of view, it's very concerning. And as you referred to then, the press conference, them saying that they're working under a contain and negotiate system on this job, it clearly seems that they just wanted to wait this one out and see what happened.
So, is there any additional intel coming in? Like, I'm assuming hostages are probably texting people, or that there are phone calls or things being made from inside. Are you guys getting anything else from inside the building?
I do remember briefings coming over police radio that there were some hostages managing to text outside to their families and loved ones. They'd managed to hide phones, and I believe it was that when they went to the bathroom, when they were allowed to go to the bathroom, that's when they were making these text messages to their family and loved ones. So we were notified of that.
But none of that intel is giving you anything actionable.
No, and from what we heard, they were very distraught and almost saying goodbye to their family, which is also concerning for us.
Okay, so what's the next significant event in the timeline?
I believe for us, as we've discussed our concerns, I'd just like to say something here. A discussion that happened within our group. I think it was probably shortly after that press conference, and but also one of the boys, he has no filter and jokes. He started the conversation by saying beers and medals for all the family, but not us. So that's we in our group 100% believe that it was a bomb. We had seen the bomb, and on the start of that conversation, then it got very real, and to the point where we all realised within ourselves that the moment we run into that cafe, that we all wholeheartedly believed that the terrorists would detonate the bomb, and every one of us would be killed. So it became a very real moment within our group. Uh, After that, we all just stood quietly. I actually text my now ex-wife, wanting pictures of my little girl. I just wanted to see some pictures of her one last time, because yeah, I, along with everyone else, believe the moment we made entry, um, that was it. I also, she was heavily pregnant, and I believed I'd never be able to meet my next child, who was only months away. And I also, in a roundabout way, tried saying my goodbyes to her, because yeah, I didn't believe I was going to ever see her again, which is very hard. And I tried not letting her know that's what I was thinking, but I'm sure she knew and was trying to be good in that moment. Um, So that was a very hard moment for us. I spoke to Paulie, who's a really good mate of mine. He was on the shield man in front of me, and I was showing him pictures of my little girl. He showed me pictures of his young bloke, his young sons, and he even said to me, "I love you, bro." And I said to him, "Love you too, mate." So in a roundabout way, we were saying goodbye to each other, because we wholeheartedly believed it was a bomb, and the moment we go in, we're yeah, that's it. So that was a very real moment that happened in the lead up to our actually being allowed to enter.
Yeah, and as in your minds, the way this is going to play out is the suspect is going to do something that's going to trigger an EA.
Yeah,
You're going to enter, and he's going to detonate the bomb.
yeah, which is sort of common practice for terrorists. Even in other incidents, they would initially deploy a bomb, wait for first responders to come in, and then detonate second bomb. So, yeah, we believed wholeheartedly that what he was going to do, was yeah, try and get something to bring us in, and then the moment that we all came in, that's when he would detonate the bomb.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess it's about 2 o'clock in the morning
Mm.
that he is agitated and starts to move people around inside the cafe, like starts kind of, for lack of a better term, rearranging his hostages.
Yeah. I still remember at that point, we actually had a call over police radio from management that it was their belief, I believe it was around 2 a.m., that they were of the belief that it was settling down for the night. That was the exact line they used. And from our standpoint, it felt the exact opposite. So you can imagine conversations amongst team members. There were a lot of expletives and swear words voiced at that point. We just could not believe that was what they believed. We believed this was ramping up to a conclusion that wasn't going to be good, and our frustration was definitely vented. That was their point of view.
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and
Um, Go ahead.
yeah, and then it was only minutes later. I think it was about 2:03 a.m. Literally minutes later that we heard the first round go off, first shotgun blast go off within the cafe. At that point, we're all stood to the EA, very concerned. We couldn't be sure what was going on. We didn't know what was happening, but we heard a shotgun blast going off inside the cafe. Very, very concerning to us. The first thing I believed I noticed was actually I saw a hostage who ran out from the foyer and was running down Phillip Street. So we could see a hostage running away. And then we were notified that 6 hostages had run to escape from the foyer exit, so the other door. And on them doing that, that's when he fired on the hostages. And as he's firing from the hip, I believed he just fired a little high. And there's footage of that. And just above the door is a glass panel, and it's just missed, like must have been by centimeters. Um, yeah, his clear intent was to shoot the hostages, blowing out the glass panel just above them. They managed to escape, and yeah, we were completely heightened at that point. From the triggers of the EA, he's now tried to execute hostages. He's tried to fire on them and kill them, and definitely put them in serious harm. So we were stood to ready for deployment. As you can imagine, our adrenal levels have surged, but we're trained to control that, to use it. And I remember I was second in the stack, so I had Paulie right in front of me. I was physically right against him, ready to go with my M4 up, and completely ready. It just had to happen now. Had to finally happen. We were allowed to do our job and go in. And I remember he was even rocking on his feet. But then minutes passed and still nothing.
Because you guys are waiting for a trigger, right? You're waiting for your leadership to trigger you, which to kind of foreshadow the trigger was tiger, tiger, tiger.
Yeah, that was our emergency action code word. So yeah, at that point, we believed every trigger had been answered to. Couldn't understand why the EA, the emergency action, hadn't been initiated. So we were just waiting for that code word, and it never happened. And then minutes went past, as you can imagine, the frustration within our team, and we still just weren't allowed to deploy.
So okay, he starts off with 18 hostages. He loses 5, 2 and or 3 and 2, and now he's lost 6 more. But this time he's taken a shot at him. So he's down to 7 hostages, and he's tried to kill the hostages that just escaped. You guys are waiting for a trigger, you don't get it. And what, like 10 minutes goes by, 8 minutes? How
Yeah,
long?
there was quite a long time, and then the next thing we knew, because we weren't being fed intel, the snipers had very limited vision. We didn't know what was happening inside the cafe, which is extremely concerning to us. The next thing, he took the manager, Tory Johnson, and placed him on his knees within the cafe. I'd also like to say and talk about Tory, his bravery displayed on that day. Just being a cafe manager he took it upon himself to he was refusing to leave at any point unless every hostage was out, and at that point also, when all those hostages ran out, he still refused. There were uh, an elderly lady and her daughter who had MS, who weren't physically able to run out, and it was his choice to stay within the cafe. Extreme bravery displayed all throughout the day, and throughout the day, learning now, the terrorists didn't like him, saw him as a position of power, and gave him a really hard time all day, which also adds to his heroism displayed on the day. But back to your question. Yeah, so from the 6 hostages running out, it's obviously infuriated him, as you can imagine. He's then taken Tory, placed him on his knees, and fired the first, and yeah, placed the shotgun on him. And the first round, he actually fired high, which went just above his head. Tory fell to the ground. As you can imagine, normal human response. From our position, we didn't know what was going on. There was no intelligence coming back from that. But now we've had two shotgun rounds go off. We've known he's fired on the first 6 hostages, and now we can hear another shotgun round going off. So we completely were of the opinion, as you can imagine, that he's now inside executing hostages, and still we were not deployed. We were not allowed to go in. Completely enraged in the situation, but we're taught to obey orders, and as hard as it was not to break ranks and want to go in and try our very best to save these hostages, which was our whole job on the day. And also earlier, from seeing them, I felt that I had more of a personal connection to them, being observing the hostages rather than them just being another hostage. I saw them in the very distressed state that they were, and my highly protective nature that I have is I was just desperate to help them. And now, from outside, I believed, as we believed, he's now executing hostages. From here, he still didn't get a reaction. I didn't know this till after. He then put Tory back on his knees again, and he's then pointed the shotgun to the back of his head and executed him. Yeah, which to this day is it's still difficult for me to talk about, purely because we weren't allowed to do our job, what we should have done, and that was to go in and contain the threat, ultimately kill him before he managed to execute a hostage. And if I and our team had been allowed to do that, I believe he'd still be alive today.
That's horrible. Does anybody outside see this? I mean, they're hearing the shots, but are any of the Sierras or anybody else seeing him put Tori on his knees and put the shotgun to his head?
Yeah, I definitely remember the second one coming over police radio, and the call I still remember to this day was hostage down, white window 2, hostage down, white window 2, which told us 100% he's now executed a hostage. From our standpoint as a team, we're now completely focused. I was even I'd run rehearsals of what I was going to do. I used to race motocross as a young guy, and so yeah, I knew it was inevitable we were going in. I was even running rehearsals. Our whole team were stood to completely ready, and just waiting for the code word. And then it came, tiger, tiger, tiger.
So the emergency action plan is that your team, which is the Alpha team, is going to go in through the primary entry door, the door on the corner.
Yep.
And the Bravo team, we've actually got give me the layout of the team and kind of what the intended action is for the emergency action.
Yeah. So as we've discussed throughout this this whole show, is emergency action is far from ideal. It's reacting to a situation, and through the only means you can. Our EA was for our team. I believe there's 7 members. To run to the front door, breach the front door with a shotgun, make entry as quick as we could, and my role was to fire on him until he was no longer a threat. But the last 2 operators on our stack, they were to use breaching shotgun rounds to fire through the window. As I said, at this point, we hadn't been notified that it was an old bank, and that there was bullet-resistant glass. So going back on our deployment, on our initiation of the EA, we ran forward as fast as we could. The last 2 members with a breaching shotgun have tried firing at the first of 4 windows, which was ineffective. Then the other entry team, which was through the foyer, the other entry point, there would have been crossfire issues, which we were well aware of. The other entry door wasn't completely opposite. It was slightly to the left, but yeah, there may well have been crossfire issues. But under an EA, under the worst case scenario, that was our only way of doing it.
So as you guys are coming through the front door and discovering that the glass is bulletproof, they're going in through the foyer and also discovering that the glass is bulletproof as they attempt to throw a flashbang through the window, if my memory serves me correctly.
Yeah. The actual glass panel doors that were used were not. They had been placed in after the bank. So speaking about our entry point, in our stack, Paulie on the shield, the ballistic shield, which isn't a large ballistic shield, but it offers some sort of protection. He sprinted as fast as he could with me sprinting on his shoulder. He pulls up at there's 2 large glass panel doors. He positions himself with a shield up to his face, and I had the muzzle of my M4 over his shoulder. I had my light source and laser of my PEC looking into the cafe, desperately scanning to try and locate him. He was wearing a white shirt, and that's the white of his shirt I detected. And from that moment, I had my laser straight on his center body mass, so on his upper chest. Initially, as I'm looking in, there's a lot of glare coming back off the 2 glass panels. As you can imagine, it's pitch black dark in there. But yeah, I had my laser and light source on him. He was initially looking back to where the the two guys on our stack had attempted to make entry by firing shotgun rounds, and then he's seen the light from me, and yeah, I remember he had his shotgun and swiveled to me, pointing the shotgun straight at our entry point. I will say it's very like the movies if Hollywood gets anything right, which I'd say that, and everything slowed down so much. In the moment, once I'd locked eyes with him, we literally had our eyes locked from that point. And I remember thinking in that moment that I was thinking that I'm going to kill you, and never did I take my eyes away from his. And then, as I said, as everything slowed down so much, just waiting for the breacher to shoot out the left of the two glass doors felt like a long time, but in reality may have only been a second or so. Once that was breached, to add to the visuals of it, it was like the glass was falling down really slowly in front of me. That's how much it had slowed down. Once the glass started to drop, my light sources in, now I have good vision on him. Paulie, the shield man, stepped off first. I had my laser on him, and as Paulie stepped, I stepped, and that's when I engaged the first round. First time I fired on him. And then as my muzzle restabilized, I managed to get a second shot off, and that's when from his end I saw a really large muzzle flash. He fired on us the first time on our entry point. At this point, I still felt, say, somewhat protection. I had Paulie sort of to my right with the shield, and once my eyes are cleared from the flash, I continued to move forward, to the threat, to advance on the threat as we're trained to do, and kept firing. As soon as my muzzle restabilized, just fire again, fire and movement, as we do. Kept advancing on him, because in my mind, the only hope that any of the hostages had was for me to terminate the threat and ultimately kill him as fast as I possibly could to stop him detonating the bomb. So, and I knew I would just fire and continue to fire until he stopped and was no longer a threat. So I was firing as rapidly as I could, knowing each round was hitting him because I saw the laser and my muzzle stabilized. Advancing on him as a threat. Then my foot hit something, so I stopped moving forward and just continued to engage from that point. Then again, I saw a really large muzzle flash from his end, and he's fired on me in that moment. Before then, because I'm just completely fixated on him and getting him down and firing and just trying to ultimately kill him as fast as I could. I hadn't been aware that Paulie, my shield man, was no longer there. On the first shot, it actually hit the other really large glass panel door, which had fallen down onto him and onto the shield, which pulled him down only momentarily, but enough for me to continue forward.
So the round that the terrorist fired was between you and Paulie and hit the glass?
Yeah, the first round actually clipped the top of Paulie's shield and hit the glass panel, and that whole glass panel fell down on top of him. On a later walkthrough, he went through, and you could clearly see where one of them was a buckshot round and one of them was an SG round. Obviously, a lot larger projectiles in that, 9 projectiles in that. So if that had hit any of us, they hit me in the face, I'd no longer have one, if you know what I mean. So
wouldn't have gone well.
Yeah, I believe the first shot was buckshot, and just in it hitting the shield and dropping the glass on him, it just pulled him down even for a moment. And my job is to continue as fast as I can and advance on the threat and continue to engage. So the second time he's fired on me, in that split second, I became very aware that I no longer have any cover. I'm completely alone, and I was probably only 7 or so meters from him. and knowing what I know about shotguns, you're doing really well to miss at that range. So I still remember being behind my M4 and just flinching. I was just waiting for the impact, which I thought was inevitable in that second. Fully believing, I was about to have my face blown off, but it didn't, which is good. And yeah, and as soon as my eyes cleared, I started to fire on him again. And as I said, everything slowed down so much at this point, but I do remember thinking, why hasn't he gone down? I know my rounds are hitting him, which later found out they were. So I moved my laser pointer up his neck and onto his head and continued to fire, and fired another 4 or 5 times or so. And then he started to crumble. In the moment, I couldn't tell if he's taking a knee or whatever, so I fired on him another couple of times, and then eventually he's come to rest on the ground. But as I knew he was the only threat, so yeah, I had my rifle on him with my laser pointer ready to, and would have engaged if he'd even moved, or what I deemed as an attempt to detonate the bomb.
How many rounds did you end up firing at him?
I believe it was a total of 17 rounds,
How many
and
times did he hit?
from coroner's reports, ballistics and everything, I hit every time. So it's and also
So
the
that's how
test.
much it slowed down in your brain. You're fired
Yeah.
17 rounds
Yep.
and you're waiting for effect while continuing to fire.
Yep.
But you fire 17 rounds, hit him 17 times, and it is until you hit him in the head that he finally is
Yeah.
stopped.
Yeah, exactly. And from all the testing and everything, they worked out that the whole engagement from the moment that the glass front door came down to the moment I'd stopped firing was between 3 to 4 seconds. So,
Yeah, if you watch the
yeah,
video from outside the building,
mm,
like it's really fast.
yeah, yeah, and it was, but in that moment, it felt like it took a long time, and so much happened in that time. The glass door coming down, the first time he engaged us and hit Paulie Shield, and the glass door removed him. There was screams from behind, man down, which I knew in that moment was one of us. But all my primary job was to get him down as fast as I could. And so I had to block that out and keep moving. From the autopsy, revealed, that he'd been hit between 3 to 5 times in the head. So, it was effective shooting, in that space. I believe the second round that he fired on me was the SG, which I still cannot to this day fathom how exactly it missed me, but it must have been very close.
Okay, so while you guys are entering on the kind of 4-1 corner through the primary door, your Bravo team is trying to come in through the vestibule area.
Yep.
And what happens because they get delayed, right? Like it doesn't
Yeah,
as happens in these
yeah.
situations, it
Exactly.
doesn't go smoothly.
No, and I wouldn't say ours was perfect, but yeah, they had a couple of issues on their entry team. But yeah, ultimately they made entry. So from my standpoint, yeah, as I said, I was still completely fixated on him. My laser was on him, ready to engage at any time. We had stunnies coming in, so sound and flash grenades coming in, because that was our only form of distraction we're allowed to use. At some point, I believe one's bounced up off the ground and exploded right in my ear. Still have hearing loss and tinnitus from that today. But it snapped me out of my stance and looking at him, just staring at him. Then I heard the call, with me. That was actually Paulie's voice. So yeah, I quickly turned and moved. There was actually a partition, like was a glass panel and a computer. So as you make entry, I imagine you either pay for your bill there or get allocated seats. But that was what my foot had hit as I was advancing. So I had to walk around a number of tables and chairs with Paulie, and then advance on the terrace as quickly as I could with Paulie. And yeah, walked to him and stood over him. In that moment, yeah, it became very evident that he was no longer a threat. He was in a pool of blood and brain matter splashed across the floor. But I do recall still to this day just processing, even though it was only a couple of seconds, that moments earlier I'd been engaged in a big gunfight with this man, and clearly I'm still here and he's now dead at my feet. But also the realization that I didn't believe I'd get more than 1 or 2 steps inside the cafe before he detonated the bomb. So it was, I was amazed that I'd even made it this far. That's when I did look down at the backpack bomb, what I believe was a bomb, which was still attached to his back. And even in that moment, from standing right over it, to me, it wholeheartedly looked like a bomb. It was very full. Later work came out that it was full with a big radio speaker, and there were wires hanging out. So even being that close, from all my training through specialists in the military, everything who had taught us on these backpack bombs, I still believed it was a bomb. As I was standing there, Paulie's moved on and I heard him screaming out, "You have been saved." He'd walked to one of the hostages who was to the terrace right, but so further along on the floor against one of the bench seats. So now, in my mind, the priorities change. He's now no longer a threat, but we need to get as many hostages out as we can, because I, along with everyone, all the operators in there, wholeheartedly believe that at any time this bomb may detonate.
So when the Bravo team gets in, do they also fire on the suspect?
No. The
So,
suspect was already down
so
before.
how many are you the only shooter, or are there other guys shooting?
No, my team leader, who came in sort of after me to my left, he engaged as well. I believe it was 5 rounds or so.
And where is the suspect standing as you come in? Is he behind a counter or a bar? Describe what's between you and him and your TL and him.
Yeah. So the way the cafe's laid out, so to my right is a large bench seat that goes for the entire wall. That's where the windows are, where the hostages have been holding up the black flags. And then off those bench seats, there's a number of tables stacked down that side. It goes all the way to the end, and there's like a little alcove at the far end. Anyway, so from my position to where the terrace was, he was standing, say, 10 meters or so, directly in front of me. There was also a lot of tables and chairs stacked up throughout the place. As I said, there was that partition where there were also tables and chairs stacked across the front as well.
When you say stacked, like was he building barricades out of them, or they just pushed him out of the way, or
Didn't look like there was too much organisation in relation to it. Yeah, as you can imagine, everything's pitch black inside. Very difficult to, especially at the time of entry. Once I'd fixated on him, obviously have a quick scan for other hostages. But later, I was notified, and still remember in the moment he had a hostage on, say, his right to my left. That was one of the elderly ladies. She was positioned to his right, which would have blocked the other entry team. So on their entry, they would have turned, and she would have been in the road, which is obviously he's done that intentionally. And on his other side, So his left, my right, there was another hostage, Louisa Hope. So he had put himself towards the back of the cafe, out of vision of any of the windows, but directly to my front, and had a hostage on either side of him.
And then where is Katrina Dawson relative to this? She's behind him?
Yeah, there were two hostages in the back corner. I believe it was actually the people who run the cafe had actually stacked extra tables at the back, in the back corner, so behind where he is, and there were two female hostages lying down on the ground directly behind him. One of those was Katrina Dawson.
Got it.
Mm.
Okay, so the suspect goes down. At what point do you realize that she's there and that she's injured?
So if I can go back quickly where I was with Paulie and this hostage, that was actually Louisa Hope. I rushed to his side to help him. We've tried getting her out as quickly as we could. She wasn't giving us any aid in doing that. She wasn't walking. Felt like we were dragging her. And I remember looking down at that point, and I observed her ankle, and it was only really been held on by a tendon or so, and there was a large blood smear behind it, from our rounds that our bosses had chose, and it was they fragment a lot on hitting something, so there was a lot of frag or fragments bouncing around inside that cafe, and as a result, she'd been hit from it. And on seeing that, we quickly grabbed her into the fireman's carry and raced her out onto the street. On the street, there was paramedics everywhere. There were even a lot of our bosses and even some bomb disposal guys. It was a scene of, I'd say, organised chaos. Quickly handed her over to the ambos. As I went to rush back into the cafe, I noticed on my left someone dressed all in black, with the paramedics frantically working on them. In that split second, or the man down came crashing back to me, and I believed that it was my team leader who was in that bad way. But on further observation, I worked out that it was the cafe manager, Tori Johnson, and wasn't obviously not in a good way at all. Another operator bringing another hostage out sort of bumped into me. It snapped me back into the moment. I knew I had to get in and try and help as many as I could. And on re-entering the cafe, the lights were now on, and felt like a very different scene. As you can imagine, when lights are off, the room feels a lot larger and more open. But on top of that, there was smoke filled the room from all the sound of flash grenades. There was bullet cartridges and sound of flash grenade canisters everywhere, smashed glass everywhere. There was distraught, screaming hostages, and then just blood everywhere. So it was quite a traumatic scene, as you can imagine at this point. I quickly moved back to where the terrorist was on the ground, and I'd just removed the hostage, Louisa Hope. That was when the team leader from the other team screaming out, I won't use tactical terms, but basically, we need to search the place as fast as we can. We need everyone out. This bomb can go off at any time. So I continued to scan the room from my position. And as I said earlier, sort of directly behind where the terrorist was now down and out was the table stacked in the back corner. And as I scanned, I noticed the top of what was someone's head. I screamed to my offsider to help me. I screamed hostage, help me. And we raced forward and started removing all of these large tables out of the road. Each table that we removed revealed more of her. And she was a blonde female with her hair in a ponytail in like a smart business suit. she was lying face down with her head in her hands. I, as quickly as I could, took a knee, and I could see that she wasn't in a great state, so I quickly rolled her over and gently onto her back, which resulted in her head sort of being on my forearm. And this is still difficult to talk about to this day, as you can imagine, but I will. Then, looking into her eyes, initially it was terror. She didn't know what was going on, and I could see that her breathing was very laboured. She was really struggling for each breath, and didn't take me long to notice that each breath in was getting harder and harder for her, and less in strength. In that moment, I realised that there was nothing I could do to help her, other than attempt to comfort her. One of the operators behind was screaming out for a medic, so I knew paramedics were on their way, and all I could do was look into her eyes, and I was just willing her, not saying it, but within myself, just desperate for her to take another breath. And she took another couple more, and then she stopped breathing.
And we will later learn that she's hit by a piece of frag from one of the rounds that probably hits the tables and chairs stacked up around her, or a round that went through the suspect. Do we know kind of where the round comes from?
Yeah, and as we discussed, there's no real way to know for certain, because obviously my team leader, he fired as well, but for me, and the way she died and stopped breathing literally in my arms, and then later to find out that her death was a result of police round through fragments, which, as you said, may well have gone through him and fragmented into her. But for myself, I've always blamed myself for her death. I've had many others tell me that there was never anything else different that I could have done. But obviously, you can't control your feelings or the way you feel about the situation. And that was her dying in my arms, and then trying to face that realization is the hardest moment of my life.
I can only imagine. Yeah, I mean, this might be a good point for us too, because the situation is now resolved. Um, like this happens, and you guys are immediately put under a gag order and told not to discuss it, not to do interviews about it. Um, like how does the team cope with? It's a successful intervention, and it's an EA that you have really no control over. Like this is not a completely winnable situation. It's going to be some kind of loss no matter what happens here. But how do you guys deal with the aftermath of this? Like what does the team do? What does the government do? Kind of give me the immediate aftermath.
Yeah, so um, for the way they conduct investigations over here, what they do, we were later removed to a different site, still completely believing there was a bomb, sent bomb texting with robots. So everyone, even at this point, still believed it was a bomb. We're removed to safe location where we're given directions from investigating detectives and bosses to hand over our weapons, even all of my ballistic vests, everything, for investigation purposes. And from that very point, we're directed not to speak to any other members involved in the investigation, in the actual incident. This is done, I believe, so our evidence doesn't get tainted through talking to others and our versions changing. That's the idea behind it. But for us and for me, being able to talk about an incident and one that was so big for us is our way of debriefing. It's our way of dealing with the situation, and not being able to do that on a personal level or a psychological level was made it extra difficult. Yeah.
How long is it until you guys get, the coroner's reports back and find out, in fact, what happened?
I know it was many months later that it actually kicked off, and the coroner's investigations. The investigations happened. I actually did a walkthrough with homicide detectives, giving my evidence. I did that a week or so later. That's when I said I saw the shotgun rounds just above our position. So the investigations kick off, and then the actual coroner starts his inquest many months later, and it was a massive inquest. I believe still today it's the largest in New South Wales history and Australia's history. It was so many people involved, so many things, so many people needed to give accounts. Still today, they have closed court on, as in no one outside of the coroner is allowed to know from ASIO, so our spy agency, what they knew about him, why he was ultimately still allowed to walk the street. And our equivalent of your DA, I believe, so our department of our DPP, who are public prosecutors, and that was closed court as well. He was actually on bail at the time for accessory to murder. His new girlfriend had murdered his ex-wife, and I believe he had over 40 or so sexual assault charges. From my standpoint and anybody's standpoint, any member of the public, why is a man allowed on bail on the street who's involved in a murder charge, involved in so many rapes? So that was never revealed. That was a closed court. And then eventually I had to give my evidence. I had a really good legal team, I'd say. My solicitor, he involves himself in a lot of my lawyer involved himself in a lot of police shootings, so he's very knowledgeable. He's actually an ex-police officer himself. And then my barrister I had looking after me was he's an ex-JAG, so he worked in the military representing military personnel, and now was a barrister in the private world. They looked after him really well, but yeah, I had even leading up to that, I had teams of ballistic. Everyone going over what happened and what I did within that 3 to 4 seconds of my engagement, being scrutinised by just about everyone, and then also giving evidence in court, scrutinising why I'd fired so many times, and literally what had happened in 3 to 4 seconds. So that was difficult giving my evidence, but I know still to this day that everything I did coincides with our training, and knowing what I did was to get him down, ultimately to kill him as fast as I could, in the hope that he wouldn't execute further hostages or detonate the bomb. So yeah, that was a difficult process, hanging over me and other members, and not being able to talk about the job, and was also very difficult for me.
Well, in the coroner's report, which we'll link to the coroner's report because it is extremely well done, detailed. They brought in independent experts. They they concluded the team did the right thing, right? Like the coroner's report makes it very clear that it is extremely critical of a lot of the command decisions that were made and those kinds of things. But like, you read the coroner's report and it pretty much validated everything that you guys did
Yeah,
from a tactical standpoint.
yeah, and for me and us, hearing that was a good thing. As you can imagine, there's not only the trial by the coroner's inquest, but there's also trial by media, and then there's social media. And I knew I shouldn't um, be reading into it too much or watching too much, but it's just everywhere you go. Australia is, yeah, where you'd say a little bit more sheltered in regards to incidents like this occurring than, say, the US or even the UK to an extent. This was such a massive thing for Australia, a terrorism incident happening in the heart of Sydney where innocent hostages were killed. So it was a huge deal here.
Yeah,
And
and by a
yeah,
guy that should not have been. I mean, we conduct catch and release policing in California. We just catch him and let him go. But that's not the traditional approach in Australia, right? This guy should have never been out on bail. He should have never had an opportunity to do this. This happens across the street from Channel 7 News. I mean, this is everything that's on the news for months,
yeah.
years.
Yeah, yeah, it was, and obviously then the inquest is such a massive thing, so it's just constantly on feed and all the media. And me in myself, as I said, I was still blaming myself at this point for her death. So I knew I should be trying to avoid um, speculation within the media, and then obviously there's social media, which is next level. But looking back on it now, I think I probably thought, because I still blame myself, that I deserved a bit of punishment from reading it, and that's why I couldn't stop myself. That obviously wasn't a smart decision in that time, but yeah, even trying to avoid it. Front page of every newspaper to come onto TV stations, or even at work, there's newspapers there or on the TV in the mailroom. So it was a big thing, and it was not being able to talk to my real support network, being my mates. My best mate Gus was there with me, and not being able to talk and communicate and debrief on it, it made it extra difficult.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, I will tell you that I spend a lot of time talking to guys like you who have been through these events, and it is amazing to me how often the gag orders, the way that the agency handles it, the way that the government handles it, in many cases inflicts more trauma.
Yeah, and then moving forward, I actually did manage to stay like after that incident. I knew I've obviously been exposed to a lot of trauma and traumatic events throughout my career, and but I'd always just, as old school cops and I imagine a lot of military do, you just lock it away and don't process it. You want to stay operational, you want to stay effective, so you just want to lock it away and tell yourself you'll deal with it later, just squash it down. And with this incident, I knew that I was definitely deeply affected. My hypervigilance was out of control. I'd walk around with my hand on my gun the whole time. I'd even imagine walking around the large police centre. I would picture other police or civilians or anyone just being shot and bleeding out in front of me. Not me shooting them, but observing them having this happen. Any blonde female I ever saw, I'd wholeheartedly believe that it was Katrina Dawson, and would, in the moment, have a panic attack and just hide it, because I was desperate to stay on. This is a job I love. This is my identity, and not only that, I wanted to be with my support network. So for months and months, probably up to 6 months, I was dealing with all of this and just desperately trying to lock it away. Then, yeah. After that, I did manage to lock it away to a point I believed I was effective. Lasting another 6 years. Um, had another big job with Paulie with suicide intervention. Ran in to save this guy, and he detonated a large petrol bomb, which blew me all the way across a garage. Paulie was in the fire. I kept trying to get back through the flame wall to get to him, but couldn't. And obviously, my emotional connection to Paulie after Lindt was significant. Desperate to get to him, I couldn't. Our nature is, doesn't matter how much you want to run through fire. The moment you start burning, your body will take over. And then saw him appear miraculously from the flames, grabbing him, and then he collapsed. Collapsed at my feet. Prior to that, we were eye to eye, and I saw the life go out of him, and he just collapsed. And yeah, in that moment, wholeheartedly believing he was dead, dragging him out, and the whole time I dragged him out, his head's just bobbing along the ground, and eventually pulled him out of the garage. And I couldn't face it. I left him with the ambos and walked off because I didn't want to hear the inevitable. But on return, he was actually alive, and the fire brigade were gently hosing his face off and just had just skin falling off his face. So now realization he's alive, but having that as an issue. But yeah, my point there was that yeah, I managed to stay on for another 6 years, but my cup was already full. I was already struggling to move on and deal with it. And then having a situation like that and other traumatic situations, I knew that I was really struggling, to keep on top of it. And yeah, roughly 6 years after, I got another knee injury. I'd had 5 surgeries on my left knee by this stage, and my surgeon telling me that I need another job, one like him where I sit behind a desk. Um, my response was, "You obviously don't know me too well, mate, because that's not me. That's not something I'd ever be comfortable with." And yeah, told me I actually need a knee replacement. But best thing to do, because I was so young, is to try and nurse it. I'd heard similar things to this before, and in my own stubborn mind, I believed I'd beat it, conquer it, get back on top of it, get back to my boys, which is where I wanted to be. But it just wasn't getting better, and being at home and not able to physically exercise and do what I wanted to, that's when everything started turning over a lot in my head. And having a good mate from our police rescue unit who has suffered from PTSD got to the point he pretty much begged me to go and see a psychologist. I didn't have too much time for shrinks or psychologists at that time, but eventually I did. And after a few sessions, she was just different instantly. We had a lot of banter and joke between each other, and I knew instantly she was different, and I got a bit of a rapport. And then I started to talk to her, and initially little things, and then it just came flooding out. And as she told me, it was going to get a lot worse before it got better. And yeah, it did get a lot worse, I will say. But that was, yeah, in the moment I realised I couldn't cope anymore, and that PTSD was taking over my life to a point I couldn't deal with it anymore.
When did it first dawn on you to write the book? Because, you know, the cafe siege is obviously the context for the book, but that's not what the book is about. When did you first think I need to share this?
Yeah, so going from where I was just speaking about, I was still in denial to a point that I was struggling. Eventually, my psychologist recommended I go into a psych hospital, which was extremely confronting, extremely difficult for me to do, but it was something that I had to do. And um, yeah, as you can imagine, it's confronting being in a psych hospital. But it was the moment that I faced the reality that I do have PTSD, and a lot of it was educating people on PTSD, a lot of ex-military, ex-emergency services, and one of the things they asked us to do was to write down a list of all our traumas and all the big incidents we'd been involved in. Obviously, Lindt was a big part of that, and a lot of others. So through my PTSD journey, writing down all of my traumas, eventually, once I realised I had PTSD, I realised it was ruling my life. Like I went through just about every symptom. I was an alcoholic, wouldn't sleep, massive, couldn't sleep through dreams, even flashbacks during the daytime. I locked myself away from the world. I massive depression. I had panic attacks that would come on at any time. Couldn't control them. Hence the reason I'd lock myself away, and even took a lot of medication, which is something I never wanted to do. But the moment came when I was taking my daughters to school, and they were just doing their usual thing. I had a bit of a fight, and then I just snapped it, just screamed till I was red in the face. And seeing how upset they were, I told myself in that exact moment that I need to do this not only for me, but my girls and my family, and I need to get better. So that's when I dropped all my inhibitions. I trusted the experts. I found myself doing things I never imagined in my life. Doing yoga and breathing exercises and meditation, and I even had a few sessions where they put magnets stimulation on your brain, because when you have PTSD, your fight or flight response is constantly activated. So that's the whole idea, is to stimulate brain blood flow back to the parts of your brain, because not only memory recall, but even everyday tasks you really struggle with. But sorry, the point I'm making is that once I realized I had PTSD, I knew I wasn't going to let it define me. It was not my new identity. It's not who I was. And I would fight with everything that I had to beat it and apply my tactical knowledge and what I'd learned. And that is to never back away from it, but to advance on the threat. And my new threat was PTSD, and that I was to advance on it and use every resource that I could, and trust the experts, try everything I could to beat it, and eventually did get on top of it. During all of that, as I said, I wrote down a lot of traumas and things that had happened to me as part of my exposure therapy and everything. And my wife at the time, I didn't manage to save my marriage, which is common for a lot of PTSD sufferers. But she told me that I should write a book. Definitely not something I'd never considered that I would ever do. But she knew someone who had written a number of books, and I had a couple of meetings with him, and the decision was made for me to write a book, and he'd edit it and work together to do that. But my two main motives, I would say, for writing the book was the version of the TAU, my version, and also all the operators. That version was never told publicly. The version of the hostages, the scrutiny of all management was well documented, but from the frontline perspective and us on the street, and every operator who bravely made entry into that cafe, well, every one of us is as brave as each other. They all believed, as I did, the moment we make entry, that we're going to die. And I wanted, that was a big motivation behind me writing it, that story needed to be told. But also, on top of that, and my constant desire to help people, is to share my story and my journey with PTSD, my refusal to let it define me, to beat me. I'm stubborn. I don't let anything defeat me. And I applied my tactical way of thinking to that, and that is to drop all my inhibitions and do whatever I can to fight it. And now to this day, I do feel a lot better, and I've conquered it to a point that I want to share my story and get that out there, and hopefully help as many as I can.
No, it's a fantastic book, and I mean, I guess the last thing I'd like to just take up with you is the journey to actually release the book, turned into, one more battle about, gag orders, and, the book is initially released under the name Officer A because you're not allowed to use your own name. Tell me the story of how the gag order ultimately gets lifted, because I think it's an interesting perspective on Australian media.
Yeah. Um, to this day, I'm uh, very disappointed and frustrated by the stance of the coroner's court and the police force. Writing the book was a pretty much took me a good two years. I like to be if it's got my if it's my thing, my story, I want to do it perfectly. But say after a year or so, reached out to the Dawson family and provided them with a draft version. If there was anything that they wanted removed, of course, I would. And they did request a few things, which obviously instantly I removed. The same with the Johnson family. Then reached out to the police force, and um, I I would still be in the police force if I could, if I didn't have PTSD, and I don't have any animosity there, and just wanted to do the right thing, and my intentions were always good, and kept prompting them for a response, and asked them, just as I was trying to do, was the right thing, and if they wanted anything removed, I would have done so. And say after 6 months or so, they've sent me some threatening emails through their legal team, saying that if I am to publish in its current version, that I'd potentially be liable to potential jail time and huge fines. My response to that was, I'm trying to do the right thing here. Can you please just tell me what you want taken out of it? There was never anything given back. Just still a constant threat. They did defer me to the coroner's court, the state coroner. I requested them if there's because there was a ridiculous amount of suppression orders made at the time of the inquest, hundreds and hundreds of them. And I requested any relevant ones. I gave them a copy of the book and asked if there's anything they'd like removed. Still trying to do the right thing. They stuffed me around for another couple of months before they refused to give me anything. They said a lot of them are available publicly. So I've done the right thing, tried removing whatever I could. In relation to my identity, at the time of the actual incident, it was my legal team, which is standard practice, to do that from possible reprisals from other terrorists upon myself or my family. Uh, Obviously, wanting that lifted shouldn't have been a big deal, but apparently it was. So after all of this, and then the build up to the release of my book, it was 2 weeks out, and the threats from the police legal team and even the head solicitor lawyer in the state were sending me like-minded threatening emails. I actually had the Daily Telegraph, which is our largest paper over here, were on side with me, and they released a big article, I believe, the day before the launch, which helped me out a lot and brought public awareness to the incident. And I still took a big chance in releasing the book, but suppressing as much as I believed they wanted and my name. So going forward from the actual launch, I hadn't been locked up, which is a good thing. And we did have a New Zealand publisher. I'm not sure if that worked legally to our advantage, but after that, we were constantly asking for my name to be lifted, and that didn't happen. I actually got my legal team from the time of the inquest, who was actually the legal team who put in for my initial suppression, requesting to the coroner's court to have my name revealed to me, but they blatantly refused, saying they'd need to open a whole other coroner's investigation in relation to it, which it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. So they're just trying to get me to go away, suppress me.
So from their perspective, you were just never going to be able to release your name?
Yeah, they had no intention of ever letting me release my name. I still can't understand the standpoint if that's what I want. And it came back to 10 years after the incident. Like, this happened 10 years ago. How am I not allowed to talk about it and put my name to my story, which is so important to me? And even having my identity and my name and my face being able to be out there speaking with a lot of other PTSD groups or survivors. Like, I know my story can help people, which is what I wanted, and my sole motivation behind it. And still, yeah, they wouldn't. Channel 7, which was actually the large television station opposite the Lindt Café the whole day. One of the reporters there was actually there the whole day and watched the whole incident. He's pretty big in the reporter world, and he's made contact with me. I had sort of been in contact over the years with him, and he made the proposal that Channel 7 would take up the legal fight if I was willing, and was willing to do a program for them, that they'd take up a legal fight to have my name revealed. And I think they were also very surprised at the blowback from the government and the police force and the coroner in relation to it. They couldn't understand it. I did warn them that that was going to be very difficult. They've told me they spent above and beyond $120,000 in legal fees to get it done. They even had to take it to the Supreme Court.
Jesus.
I know.
Just so you can put your name on a book that you wrote.
Put my name. That's it. That's all it is. And I still cannot understand the motivation. Like, possibly it's that they don't want this incident talked about because there were, as detailed, many questionable decisions, I would say, on the day. And the way I wrote the book, I didn't need to. I didn't need to say that they'd already been dragged over the coals for decisions they'd made. And,
I mean, the book is no more critical of them than the coroner's report is. I mean, the coroner's report is scathing. Right? It's not that the coroner's report is not like, hey, everything went well. The coroner's report is, you should have done this. There should have been professional negotiators. They should have been in contact. Like, it is. I will link to the coroner's report in the show notes, but like, it is, from a command and control standpoint, reading the coroner's report is like a who's who of things that shouldn't have happened. The only thing that the coroner seemed to believe was done well was the EA. It seemed that they were, relatively complimentary of the team's bravery and the team's response. But yeah, it is. I don't know what the government was fearing with the book, because there was the coroner's report eviscerated the government response. So and actually the book is not. I don't think you were anywhere near as harsh as the coroner was.
No, and yeah, I actually made a point of doing that. Like, they didn't need further criticism. It was out there in the public view. Everything they had done, every mistake they had made, had already been talked about, and I didn't feel that I needed to do that, because everyone knew the decisions they made weren't exactly the correct ones. And so, yeah, from my standpoint, the way I wrote the book was never vindictive towards them at all. And that's why I just could not understand why they fought so hard for the book never to be released. And then also, it appeared fighting so hard for me not to even be allowed to put my name to the book and get my name out there. The only thing I can speculate is that they don't want this incident back in the public forum. They don't want it spoken about because of the decisions made on that day. But yeah, I took the high road. I know within myself I've done everything reasonable that I could do, and yeah, still confused as to why they did what they did.
Yeah, I mean, perfect example is when we first started talking about doing this, we were going to not even identify you. Right? I mean, this was going to be anonymous or Officer A. It was not going to be Ben. It wasn't until ABC succeeded. I think it's definitely worth people watching the special that was done. It's very clear that the reporter, it had an emotional tie to this, having watched it play out in real time 10 years ago. I think the piece that they subsequently did with you is actually fantastic. Like it really kind of documents not only the incident, but your journey back to kind of mental health and happiness and all those. So we will also link to that. If people want to learn more about, what you're doing now to get the book, what is the best way for them to find you and to find what you're doing?
Yeah, obviously I have social media, Facebook and Instagram, which I'm on quite a bit. That's Tiger Book. And the best way to purchase the book would be online through tigerbook.com. We do ship to the States and all around the world. And I would say my intention, as I've covered, was to get my message out there and to help sufferers of PTSD. And uh, honestly, the response so far has been overwhelming, overwhelmingly positive. And I'm now actually this year I'm ramping up and speaking with as many groups as I can, which I now can because I have my identity back. So yeah, through the book and the feedback of my journey, everything I went through and my steps, and ways of attacking and confronting the threat that is PTSD and not letting it own me and define me, that message has resonated very strongly within military and ex-emergency services personnel, but not only that, even civilians and the people who suffer from PTSD. And it's such a massive problem. It doesn't only affect the sufferer, but all of their immediate family, their wife, their children, or husbands, or even brothers. And yeah, it affects such a large number of people, and that's why I see it as such an important thing for me to do.
Love it, man. You're doing good work, Ben, and I appreciate it. And I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me and walk through what was certainly the most traumatic day of your life.
Thanks very much. I appreciate you having me on.